Let's just capture it.
Yay.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think let's start doing exactly what Carol was gonna do. How about everybody, if you don't mind, introducing yourself in the chat, maybe. Let me see. I've got for potential introductions, your name, your pronouns, if you feel comfortable sharing, the city, and maybe even the district. Let's edit that. If you know your district that you're calling from. And it would be awesome to know why you're here today as well. Presumably, it's because you're interested in lobbying. But if there's something else you'd like to share about what brought you to this meeting when you could be chilling out Friday evening and not worrying about anything, that would be awesome to know. And I'll share my presentation too. There we go. I wonder if I can display it and still see people. There, I can.
I do have a question for Carol.
Oh.
In fact, do you say his name, Senator Lujan?
Lujan.
Or Lujan?
Lujan. Yes, Lujan.
Okay.
Sarah got me a little mixed up because she brought in her very famous Spanish, and there's another pronunciation for it, but that's not how he pronounces it. So
got it.
Lujan, yes. Ben Ray Lu. See, I got it wrong because I was thinking too much.
We're gonna practice. We're gonna have pre-meetings. Thank you, Laurel, for introducing yourself in the chat. Yeah, thank you for keeping those introductions coming. So I'm going to, it's about 10 after, so let's go ahead and get started. This is our introduction to lobbying and then Q&A. Before I get started, now I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but I would be remiss not to remind everybody. Probably most of you are here because you care about the climate, and the number one thing you can do for the climate right now is to vote if you haven't already, right? Everybody you're going to vote for members of your county government to the president, are going to create and or implement policies that affect sustainability issues and our carbon emissions. So I really hope that everybody is planning to take that action tomorrow. There's early voting in New Mexico, or on Tuesday if you can't make it tomorrow. So once again, sure, I'm preaching to the choir there, but it would be wrong not to mention it. So having gotten that out of the way, thank you, Sean, for voting. Thank you, everybody, for continuing to introduce yourself. Put your name in there if you feel comfortable sharing your pronouns, the city and maybe the district that you're writing from. If you don't know your district, we can help you figure that out, and why you're here today. So I'll introduce myself, since I'm kind of facilitating the presentation right now. So Sara Mason, she, her pronouns. I am calling from Los Alamos, which is in the 3rd Congressional District. And I'm here today because I'm the state coordinator of Citizens Climate Lobby in New Mexico. So I lead our one state chapter, and I have the real privilege of working with volunteers from all over the state, which is amazing. Oh, and Rebecca, it's super awesome that you're here. We haven't gotten to meet in person. So thank you so much for being here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think you and I stood next to each other at the political meeting that was this afternoon.
Yeah, we probably did.
And Teresa, etc. Okay. Anyway, I thought you looked familiar, and I've known your name from Los Alamos and the wonderful work you do with our kids. So thank you. Now I get to see you in person. Well, yay, visually. So I get a picture.
Yeah. We won't have to go far to actually see each other in person soon. So this is our first step.
We stood next to each other. I think you took a picture for me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Sue, I'm so happy to hear you say that you want to find out more about CCL, what CCL does, because that's actually where we're gonna start. I think it's important to understand how we approach lobbying, to know a little bit about this. And I want you to know some of the other things you could think about doing in addition to lobbying, or instead, if this isn't really your thing, because I do recommend that everybody try it once, but it certainly isn't where everybody finds their passion as far as advocacy goes. So a really important part about what we do, I think it could be summarized in this quote from CCL's founder, Marshall Saunders. So I used to think the important people were taking care of the important problems. No, preserving a livable world is up to us little people. What we do and do not do really counts. We're the important people, and we have the power and the responsibility to start making some of these changes. And so Citizens Climate Lobby is about giving people practical means to have an impact on a really big issue, one of the biggest issues humanity is facing. So our chapters, this is looking a little weird in the animation, but hopefully you can still see that we've got currently over 520 chapters, more than 240,000 people connected to the network. Everybody from people in your same city and state to people in different countries, right, are part of this really big network. We have some core values that influence how we do what we do. So I'm not actually telling you what we do yet. I'm just talking about how we make it happen. So number one, focus. We're focused on a relatively narrow set of policy issues that have an impact on reducing carbon emissions at the federal level, right? So it's a pretty narrow focus compared to some climate groups. We are optimistic. We don't believe that it's ever too late to make some kind of positive impact on these issues that we're working on. We value diversity, right? Diversity of political opinion, but also race, religion, creed, sexual orientation, gender identity, all of that stuff. When you normally think of as diversity, we think of having lots of different people with different backgrounds working on this issue as one of our biggest strengths. We are relationship based, right? So we're all about getting to know people, what they value, and building consensus in order to work towards a common goal together. When I say diversity, I mentioned diversity of political opinion. A really important thing about what we do is that we are nonpartisan. We're focused on policy issues, not political parties. So we absolutely welcome the entire political spectrum. If you agree with what we're working on and want to join in with us, then we want to work with you too. And then personal power. Lobbying is such a great opportunity to exercise that. We're all about giving you, finding ways for you to use your agency and your voice as a voter and a constituent. So that is how we do what we do, right? So getting into a little bit of what we do in particular, we engage 5 different, what are called levers of political will in order to motivate Congress, right? And I'm going to talk about all of the other ones to give you an example of some of the awesome things that our chapter has done before we get into lobbying, right? Just really briefly, this is kind of a best of for our chapter right now. So one of those levers is grassroots outreach. So that involves direct outreach in the community with activities like tabling and presenting. So we've got here, here's on the right, Martha Martinez Del Rio, our liaison in our 2nd district, did a table near Silver City for Earth Day. You can see it was really cool, and it got shared on Martin Heinrich's Instagram. And Martha has not yet let this brush with fame change her so far. So that's really exciting. On the left there, we've got a presentation that we did with Bill Barron and some of the high schoolers here in Los Alamos. We did a workshop in the community at the Los Alamos Teen Center. So that would be another example of some of the stuff we've done that falls into the grassroots outreach category. Another example of the kinds of activities we can engage in are media relations. So on the right there, I talk a lot about our high schoolers here in Los Alamos because they're so amazing. So they started a campaign to electrify their school systems last year. They wrote a ton of awesome stuff in our local media. So that's a little snippet of just one of the many things that they publish. On right there, we've got an announcement for when Martha appeared on a local radio station to talk about our organization, right? So media relations can include writing things for publication, also giving these radio, TV or podcast interviews, and working with editorial boards for endorsement. So grass tops engagement, this is all about working with our community leaders, right? So we've got here Los Alamos High School Eco Club and elementary school students from Chamisa Elementary here in Los Alamos from their Global Warming Express organization talking about the importance of electrifying our local school system with the school board. This was from February. And was it adorable to see the elementary school students? Yes, it was extremely adorable. It was also a great example of grass tops engagement. And we've got group development and organizing. So this is kind of the nuts and bolts of making the state organization happen. Maybe someday it will also include chapters for local cities. I'm sure hopeful. Right now we've just got the one state chapter. We have a monthly Zoom call for one, so we've got the information there. We do onboarding outreach whenever a new person signs up. And so this is, when we talk about this lever, this is everything about recruiting and integrating new volunteers and building the skill sets of the current volunteers. So I've got another, link there below for open positions. We're not hiring, but if you're looking for like a particular kind of activity to engage in, lots of good ideas at that link. So that takes us through 4 levers all the way to lobbying Congress, right? Which is the main thing we're here to talk about today. So meeting with our elected leaders and their staff to, number 1, learn. Number 2, build relationships. And number 3, support them, support our members of Congress and their staff in taking action to reduce our nation's carbon emissions, right? So this is an exercise in relationship building in which we learn how to be more effective and empower our members of Congress to do what we know we need to do to take action about our carbon emissions and the climate crisis. So what are the kinds of things that we talk about when we're lobbying? It falls within our policy agenda. So I mentioned that we're pretty focused. We have 4 policy areas, and they all have to do with directly or indirectly reducing our carbon emissions at the federal level. It's not that there aren't other policy issues that are important. It's just that we want to stay effective. We want to stay focused on a narrow enough set of issues that we can really be effective with them. So those areas are carbon pricing, healthy forests, building electrification and efficiency, and clean energy permitting reform. I see we've had another pet join us. That's very exciting. It's a great development for the conversation. Okay. So we're just going to briefly go through all of these, not going to get into any of them in too much depth, but if there are questions, I may or may not be able to answer, but probably someone in here can get you the information that you need. So number 1, carbon pricing. So we advocate for a carbon fee and dividend, meaning that there's a price placed on carbon emissions at the source. That money is collected and it is redistributed to American households. That's what the fee and dividend refers to. Number 1. Number 2, a carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is really fun to say. CBAM, it's fun to say as an initialism. The CBAM is going to impose a tax on goods being imported from other countries who do not have the same carbon tax structure that we do. So that's to not disadvantage American manufacturers of goods that are being held to higher emission standards, right? So that's kind of leveling the playing field between us and countries that are not doing what they need to do to decrease emissions. So those are the 3 components: the fee, the dividend, and the carbon border adjustment mechanism that Citizens Climate Lobby advocates for. And this is the policy area that we've had for the longest time, all except for the last probably 2-ish years have we added on these other areas, but they're also very exciting. So let's talk about those 2. So healthy forests. That's all about preserving and expanding forests and climate smart forestry, increasing urban forests, and doing that in a way that focuses on areas where that increase will have the most benefit, right? So keeping what we've got in terms of forests and adding them in where they'd be most beneficial. Building electrification and efficiency. This one really came on board with the Inflation Reduction Act, which provided an unprecedented level of support for everybody from us in our houses to schools, businesses, just everybody to make their buildings more efficient, right? So educating the public and elected officials about all of the options there are to do these things more easily and more affordably, and how important it is for us to do this in order to lower our carbon emissions once again. And then finally, we've got clean energy permitting reform, basically, right? So energy infrastructure takes a really long time to permit. And we have an enormous capacity right now to generate clean energy, but we can't get it everywhere it needs to go because we can't build the transmission lines that we need fast enough to get it from one place to another, right? So it's a little wonky. It's not very exciting to talk about, but this is actually a super, super important thing to make sure that the things we're doing in the other areas actually translate into clean energy infrastructure that produces the clean energy we need and gets it everywhere it needs to go. So with that, I'm going to kind of start talking more about lobbying, but I do want to pause because I've been talking for a really long time and see if anybody has any questions before we just kind of continue along here. Questions?
You're
or
doing great. You're
if there-
doing great, Sarah.
Thank you, Michael. I was going to say if Michael or any of our other experienced CCLers, if there's anything you want to add, I would love to give an opportunity for that as well.
Well, I'll just add. So I joined about 2 years ago, and my understanding was that of the four things, the four lobbying areas that Sarah described, until about 2.5 years ago, the total focus of the organization was on carbon pricing as the most effective way to reduce carbon emissions and have an impact. And then the summer of 22, I think, is when CCL leadership decided to expand the focus into those other three areas: healthy forests, electrification of buildings, and permitting reform. So, which I like, right? Because I think you could go for years, goes for years without any carbon pricing happening, and feel like you hadn't really been able to affect a big change. So that's my 2 cents worth.
And I'm glad you were happy with it and wanted to stick around. So, what were you going to say, Carol?
I was going to say that I have been with CCL for 13 years, and 11 years, sorry, 2013. And yeah, carbon fee and dividend was it. That was what we were pushing. We were getting support. We had support, but it just, the rising cost of gas that was associated with it wasn't palatable for a lot of the legislators. So it was not. We kept it fresh all the time, and we did support other bills that were happening that could lead us to this, but mostly it was carbon fee and dividend. But we did it because that's what we wanted to promote. We wanted to cut down on emissions. So
I'm not giving up on carbon fee and dividend. Anything else we do, it's only going to make it better when you add that on top of it. So not giving up, but we've got these other things that, like I said, the bottom line is carbon emissions coming down, right? That's directly or indirectly what we're getting at.
Hey, Sarah,
hey,
Does the carbon fee and dividend, would that be apply at a tariff as goods that from other countries that aren't under our regulations and are cheaper?
Yeah, that's
No.
the carbon border adjustment mechanism. So the fee is just the tax on emissions at the source. The dividend is taking that money and giving it back. And then the carbon border adjustment mechanism is like the third peg of the stool that, yeah, will remove any disadvantage that American manufacturers would be under from competing with countries that, yeah, don't have our same emission standards.
Correct, yes.
Thanks.
Absolutely, yeah. All right. So you've got kind of a bird's eye overview of how we kind of operate as an organization, our values, the kinds of activities we do, our policy areas. I've got a couple examples of bills that we've lobbied on in the past. I can't tell you for sure what that's going to be this time. We won't know for about 3 more weeks. And then we're going to talk about just kind of the lobbying schedule and structure of the meeting. And yeah, check that comment from Laurel in the chat where 2025 could be a carbon fee year. So there's something that Danny put out coming up. So that's really exciting. I'm going to reach into that when I need some optimism for the next year. So there's a CCL accomplishments page where they have some of the things that we've lobbied on pretty recently and kind of what the status is. So currently, things are happening in Congress with the Prove It Act. That's actually kind of the first step in what would need to happen to assess a carbon fee. It directs the Department of Energy to do a study about emissions levels from a lot of different products. So you got to know what the emissions are in order to know how to tax whatever it is. So the law itself doesn't take that step. It just directs the study, but it would be a necessary step to do something like that. We've got the Energy Permitting Reform Act, which looks like it was only, I kind of thought it had been introduced in the House, but it's at least been interested in the Senate. It's going to make a lot of the changes that we consider necessary in order to get energy infrastructure permitted faster, right? The Seedlings for Sustainable Habitat Restoration Act. This is going to clarify that certain monies, I believe coming from the IRA, can be used to increase the production of seedlings and establish seedling nurseries. And I believe there's like specific programs in New Mexico that would stand to receive some of those funds and be able to do that. So that's an exciting one for us. Senator Lujan co-sponsored that, which is extremely cool. And the increased TSP Access Act is another one that's currently going, might become part of the Farm Bill, but it's going to it's going to allow for the easier certification of technical service providers who are workers that do like on the ground support for farmers and agricultural workers to do things like make a sustainable feeding plan, for example. So it helps them implement climate smart agriculture by providing on the ground support. There's just not quite enough of them. The certification process isn't moving fast enough, so this bill would speed that up. So those are 4 things that we've lobbied on recently that are all moving in the direction we want to see. We've also got several things that were signed into law, which unfortunately, the only one I kind of recognize that came into be when I was more involved is the Growing Climate Solutions Act. So not unfortunately, I just can't tell you nearly as much about these, but so it's cool to see a record of several years of bills that we've lobbied on cross the finish line, including one that passed at least the House a few years ago. So that's all on the website for you to check out if you want more examples of bills. Oh yeah, the Inflation Reduction Act. So here's some of the stats about the level of engagement that CCL had across the country in terms of advocacy for this bill. So that's really, really exciting and something that we're super happy about. So if we're going to talk more about lobbying, it's really important to talk about our liaisons. So there's specific CCL members who have the responsibility of building and maintaining relationships with a particular member of Congress. So for us, that's 2 senators and 3 representatives in our House of Representatives. They also schedule and generally lead the lobby meetings. So several of them, if you got on early, you heard them introduce themselves. They might have introduced themselves in the chat. But here are the names of our lobbyists. And so if you're going to join a lobby team and you sign up, you can expect an email from one or more of them trying to schedule a pre-meeting with you. So that'll be something fun to look forward to. And in the meeting that they help plan and facilitate, here are some of the things that's going to happen. Number one, they're generally going to be 30 minutes. That's true whether in person or virtually, like we're preparing to do in December. The person who plans the meeting and who leads it is always going to be an experienced person, liaison, if we can make that happen. And as a volunteer, you're going to get signed a particular role, and usually just one, unless you're really gung-ho and really excited about multitasking. So there's a link with the explanations. Does somebody have a question? Oh, okay. I thought I heard something. All right.
No, I just chuckled at the idea of being excited about multitasking.
Well, you don't have to be. None of us do, right? We can unitask in this meeting. So meeting leader, like we said, that's usually the liaison. There's an appreciator. So there's a person who their main role is to find out something to appreciate about the member of Congress. And it doesn't have to be anything climate related. So for example, in one of my first lobbying meetings with Representative Harrell, who was in the office before Gabe Vasquez, the appreciator in that meeting with her staffer said, I really appreciate that Representative Harrell has never missed a vote the entire time she's been in office, which is really cool. And the staffer appreciated recognition for that. So just to give you an example, it's something that you genuinely appreciate. Your only job is to figure out what that is and then share it at the beginning of the meeting. We need somebody to keep time. So that's more of a behind the scenes sort of role, right? So we just really need somebody to keep us on track for time and make sure we don't go over. A note taker. So that one is usually not very, it's not a lot of communication required. It is pretty demanding though, right? There can be a lot that goes on in the meeting. So taking all those down and cleaning them up and turning them in. So not a lot of active speaking, but active participation in a quiet way. Asker, so there's going to be a primary legislative focus that we'll ask about and a secondary legislative focus, at least one, sometimes more. So you could have the job to broach the topic of that bill with the member of Congress, and I promise it's not as intimidating as it sounds. If you're there in person, your job can be to drop off the thank you card afterwards. That's what the deliverer would do. A photographer to take, and then very importantly, email to me a picture of everybody, and also just a listener. So anybody who is in the meeting today or listening to this recorder afterwards and is like, gee, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing anything, that's okay. If you just want to show up, introduce yourself and listen, we would still love you to be in the meeting anyways. And an important thing about this in the meeting, we ask as many questions as possible. A really important thing we're doing there is learning. We want to be talking about less. We want to be talking less than 50% of the time if we can. So my point is it's really not too much burden on any individual person to just be talking and talking and talking for 30 minutes, not even the person leading the meeting. In the meeting, we do make recommendations about policies that we're interested in. That is super important. However, as I mentioned, a really important thing that we're there to is learn, right? So just like when we're relating to each other in CCL, we're not there to prove each other right or wrong. We're not there to win. That's absolutely true when we're talking to our members of Congress, right? We're there to learn what they like or dislike about what we're interested in. And we're also there to learn what they need to see from us, what they would need in order to take that next step that we're hopeful that they would be able to take someday. And this helps us become and remain trusted partners. We're working with them to help them do better, and they're excited to see us, right? Like that's our goal. Any questions about that so far before we get into the kind of scheduling aspect of things? Any questions?
I just want to add something, if I may. So when we're in the meeting And like Sarah said, we want to do less talking rather than, we don't have to explain everything to the nth degree. The most important thing and the most interesting thing is that if we come up with enough open-ended questions, the who, why, what, where, when, and how, that gets the legislator or the assistant, the climate expert in the office talking, and that's what we want. And
Yeah.
when we do our notes, blah, 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 is we're getting what they said, because that's going to help us in the future to make better decisions about talking to them.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that, Carol. And Ben, what would you like to add?
Sorry, that it's the being respectful and positive is so wonderful because we when we go to these meetings, the member of Congress or the staffers will tell us often, like, you are my favorite people to meet with. I always look forward to seeing you guys. And it makes it a lot easier to go see them.
Right. Cool.
Thanks everybody for jumping in and adding your experience there. That's wonderful. All right, get more down into the nitty gritty. So CCL has kind of seasonally, kind of 3 main seasons. In March, there is an additional push for lobbying with conservative members of Congress. So that's not the case for New Mexico right now, but we do have that district that goes back and forth. So not entirely out of the question that that could be a part of our future, right? The two lobbying seasons that we're definitely involved with are in the summer. For the past 2 years, we've gone in person at the Capitol, absolutely planning to go back in July 2025 as well. We do that one hybrid though. We've done it that way every time. So, oh, awesome. We got another cat here. That's wonderful. So we have a small group of people there in person, and we also have people call in via Zoom. I usually prop them up on my water bottle. So that's really not a participatory role, but you still get to listen and, you know, have your presence made as a constituent. Everybody's been really flexible with us doing that so far. And then in the fall, right, either November or December, we have virtual lobbying, which is what we'll talk more about in a second. They have similar schedules. So a month to 6 weeks in advance, we start requesting to meet. And so we've already sent in our initial requests. For better or for worse, that does not mean that we know 4 to 6 weeks when they're going to happen. There could be potentially some that we don't know are going to happen until right before. Both times we've been there in person, there was at least one meeting that got scheduled within the previous 24 hours, right? That's just a fact of life. These folks are super busy, right? I don't think some of these members of Congress know what they're going to do until 5 minutes before it happens sometimes, right? So we're competing with a lot of people, and that's just kind of something we have to accept about the process. 2 to 3 weeks before the meeting is when the official policy agenda for the meeting comes out. So those are our asks. So we're going to get in the training I'll talk to you about, we'll have a primary ask. That's the most important thing to bring up. And then one or more secondary asks, which are, you know, you have time for them if you have time for them to include them. And then right before the actual lobby meetings, there's a pre-meeting with your lobby team. So it can take 30 minutes to an hour. Everybody kind of goes over what they're going to do, and usually a brief dry run of how it'll go. And then a conference. So there's a virtual conference this time, an in-person one in the summer, which I certainly recommend, though it's not actually required to lobby with us in December. So your total time commitment as being on a lobby team is going to be 2 to 4 hours, just depending on everything between now and December 12th. So here are some things I'll take you through how that breaks out here. So as soon as you want to, go ahead and register for the virtual conference. It's really, most of the stuff is on Saturday, December 7th. That's when most of the activities are happening. Not required, but I think it'll be a great time and you'll enjoy it. So That's number one. Number two, if you're even 50% interested in lobbying with us, go ahead and click on this link in this slide to fill out the form. That's going to help me assign you to lobby teams. Basically, it's going to make my life easier. So go ahead and do that by November 23rd at the latest. And then if this is your first time lobbying with CCL, plan to take the climate advocate training. So you can either watch a recorded session anytime. I think it's about an hour. And then at the fall conference, there's a live session, which would be probably the more fun way to do it, but that may or may not work for your schedule. So that's if you're totally new, that's 1 hour of your time that this is going to require to take that climate advocate training. The next thing coming up is November 21st. This is when CCL is going to have a national call when they unveil our lobby day asks. It's going to be an hour and a half long. I think a substantial part of that will be Q&A. It's also going to be recorded. So you do need to watch this. Pretty much everybody does. But if you're not able to attend it live, you can watch the recording later. That falls on the same. So our normal meeting schedule will be 5:30 to 6:30 that day. We're just going to have a short meeting 5:30 to 6 so we can all hop on the national call afterwards. And then a couple days later, right? So you have to fill out that form by the 23rd, the 24th. I'm going to look at everybody who filled it out, put you all on lobbying teams, and turn that information over to your liaisons. And I'm going to say, Carol, here's 3 to 6 people you can contact to try to be on your lobbying team, for example. And then, you know, you'll be hearing from Carol if you were on the list. So that's the day when that could start happening. And I do want to pause. So liaisons, if you want to be on other people's lobby teams, go ahead and fill out that form and tell me when you're available and all that stuff. So if you only want to do your own lobby team, that's fine. But if you want to be on anybody else's, please also fill out that form, which I would super appreciate. Okay, so the pre-meetings are going to end up happening sometime between December 1st and December 8th, depending on you know, when your liaison can get that scheduled. So please respond to them as soon as possible to make it easier. So like I said, that could take 30 minutes to an hour. If you want to be on multiple teams, that's totally fine. You can do multiple meetings if you want to, but each one is going to have their own pre-meeting probably. If you want to be in multiple meetings, we can also do everything we can to make sure you have like the same role in each meeting, right? So if you're asking about a particular bill in one meeting, we'll try to make you the asker for that in the other meeting to kind of reduce the burden of preparing on you. The 6th and the 7th is the fall conference. Most of the programming is on the 7th, and that's when they have that climate advocate training if you want to take that. And then the week of December 9th is the lobby day meeting. And so right now, we don't have any of them scheduled. They could really fall in any 30-minute block from probably 7 a.m. Mountain times, that would be 9 a.m. Eastern time, down to 3 p.m. local time. I would be surprised if they went, I bet they'll be scheduled between like 7 and 2. And if you're not available for any of that, you know, just tell us if you're available or not. I personally, so I can tell you, like, I can clear my schedule easily if I have enough notice, but if not, sometimes I'm not available, right? So I'm not necessarily going to be available all that time either, and we're not expecting you to be. Everybody's just got to do the best they can, accepting that sometimes these meetings get scheduled at the last minute, right? And so that's actually the last of the content I have prepared. I've got my contact information here, and we can spend, you know, as much time as y'all want answering any other questions you have about this lobbying crash course.
Well, you told me it would be fun, Sarah, and it does sound like fun.
Oh, good. That wasn't, you told me it would be fun, but this is the most boring thing I've ever heard of in my life.
Yeah, no, not at all. It sounds fun being part of a team like that and not having the whole burden rest on one person's shoulders. Yeah.
I had been with CCL for 3 weeks when I did my first lobby meeting. It does not take a ton of preparation, and you do not need to be a climate or policy expert. I certainly am still not either of those things.
Well, I have to say lobbying is the best way to feel like you are accomplishing something in the climate space, because we only can get things done if we have legislators on our side. So building those relationships and finding out that people can change, a congressman that I was liaison to, was very moderate and came along quite nicely as we pursued the subject of carbon fee and dividend, and it's so exciting. I just love being in a lobby room live, and then learning how to do it on Zoom and still bring people together.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I want to add that the virtual meetings are fun and the live meetings are even more fun. So
You have another beautiful cat.
Yeah, this is Phoenix.
Phoenix is a beauty.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew she'd show up at some point.
All right. Well, anything else anybody would like to ask or just share for those of you who have gone through this with us before?
Well, just the practical question of, will these slides be available?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna send out this slide and these recordings and this recording, and I'm anytime anybody wants to talk to me, if you are interested in this, I want to answer your questions and see what we can do to make it happen.
Sarah, do we have some people outside of those of us on the call who are also signing up to lobby?
Yeah, a couple people, off the top of my head, about 4 people who said they're interested but not available tonight. And so I think we're gonna have all of you liaisons, I think, can expect at least one person who's totally new in your lobby teams, which is super cool.
That's cool.
I want to get some of the students, Sarah, that you found.
I'm trying. I sure would love for them to join us,
Right.
because I think our members of Congress and their staff, based on what I saw this summer, are really excited to hear from youth. And I think it would be cool for our students to experience how much their voice matters.
Of course. Well, I'll just do a plug for all the great training that's on, the CCL site as a member is kind of gnarly to navigate, I found, but you can find some amazing trainings on there, which I've been really benefited by doing.
Absolutely. I'll try and get a link to the training also. There we go. Yeah, this is a great kind of splash page. Yeah, it is like the ocean. But that's a great splash page for a lot of the trainings that they have available. So is searching on the Google on just Google, so, Googling Citizens Climate Lobby Training is a helpful way to find stuff a lot of times. And we can Michael and those of us who have spent more time on the site can also help you find things, so don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
I think my only question is for Martha. Do you ever stop being nervous whenever you go to have a meeting, or is it?
Personally, I was terrified my first live one, and then my second time, this was when I was lobbying in a conservative state. I was so mad I wasn't nervous. So I'm not nearly as nervous as I was the first time.
Good answer.
I don't know if I get nervous either. Like, having done it a few times, Ben, it's just like our members of Congress and their staff are regular people. Like, it's and they're public servants and they're awesome for doing that, but they're regular people there to do a job, and we're there to help them do it better. So it's
Yeah.
just, to me, it's taken down the intimidation a lot to kind of have that realization, be like, they're just people and we're just having a conversation.
We're also really lucky with how easy it is to meet with our particular members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they're super approachable, super easy to schedule with, and they
Mhm.
all care about this issue. So we're really lucky in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Hey, Laurel.
Hi, I'm just trying to turn on my video so you can see me on my walk. Oh yeah, there I am. This is a wonderful training. I'm going to ask permission to put it on our Mountain West YouTube channel so that volunteers in states like Wyoming and even in Idaho, other places could also maybe benefit from your overview. And then my only comment was about, I'm on the team Montana for District 1, which is a real Republican. And we love meeting with his team and they love us. It's like, I'm so excited to see them again and move forward with them. Yeah, so that was just my only comment other than great job.
Thank you, Laurel. No, absolutely feel free to share this. And at the state coordinator call a little while ago, it was really cool to hear people from really conservative states talking about the Energy Permitting Reform Act and how excited they are seeing their conservative members of Congress make a really impactful contribution to climate policy, right? So it's the beauty of what we're doing, working with a really diverse group of people.
And just the last thing is that after our meetings with our congressman, they co-sponsored one of our bills and they were like, basically, we love you guys. You're great. We want to help you. So then they were the first co-sponsor after the summer lobby day. We were super celebrating.
Wow,
That's fantastic.
That's amazing.
fantastic.
That is awesome.
All right, everybody. I'll go ahead and stop the recording here, I think.